G'day, I'm Rachel and this is Professional Organiser Tas. I wanted to come on here and do a video for you as a little guide to when you're sorting things, and it doesn't matter whether you are sorting clothing or paperwork, or the example that I'm going to use is those dumping grounds, you know, the ones where you might have a baby on one arm and you've walked into the kitchen area and you put something on the bench, and then Dad comes home and he's grabbed the mail on the way in and dumps that there on the bench, and things just seem to accumulate. And I think most of us have a spot where things tend to get dumped. Now, obviously, the golden rule of being organised is to have a place for everything and to have everything in its place. But if for anyone who has had children, you know that that's not nearly as simple as it sounds when you are operating a household, when you've got all that stuff going on. So the one thing I would say is that it's really important to recognise that being organised is not a one-off thing. It's something that's ongoing. And so it really does help to start to schedule in maintenance times. And so it might be that Friday night you have an easy meal so that you're not spending as much time on food preparation. And there's an understanding in the household that you're actually going to sit down for, say, an hour and tend to things together. And that might mean that the washing is all dry in a basket, and that's when you sit together, sort the washing, fold the washing, and put it where it belongs. And at the same time, it might be that you go to that dumping ground and resolve the things that are there. So one thing I would say regarding the dumping ground is if it's happening naturally, don't fight nature. Make that a spot that's intentionally the dumping ground. So it might be that you have a very nice wicker basket in that spot and you expect that people will dump things into that basket. And then during that maintenance hour on, say, your Friday night, you go through as a team to organise that basket. Or if one person can do it, then that's fine. But I find with this sort of thing, encouraging people to participate, but make it an invitation. Put on some good music, have some good food, just make it a positive experience and role model it. So the last thing you want to do is have a member of the family, you know, it might be that you have young children and you have an older child, that you say to the older child, right, that's your job, I want you to deal with that. That isn't motivational. That we don't motivate people that way. But if we say, okay guys, the pizza's up, we'll put on some nice music. The reason I don't say put on a good TV show or something, I like to sort washing in front of a good movie, but oftentimes people are distracted by that, and so eventually they'll sit down and start staring at the movie and not participating. So some good music, and then what you do is you set up so you have the items that need sorting, and then you have some spaces that are labelled where they get sorted into. So one thing is, this is taken from Dave Allen's Getting Things Done system, and it is a book that you can access. You deal with the things that can be dealt with quickly. So if it can be dealt with in 2 minutes, go deal with it. So for me, if that looked like I have a dumping ground and it has 2 sun hats and a pair of socks that belong in the children's room, realistically what I'd do, I could run them up to the room and back, but realistically what I'd do is I would have a pile for the children's room, and so I would put the hat and the socks in that pile, and then as part of the process, once we finish sorting, put those things up in the children's room. You might have a pile of things that you just can't deal with on that day, and that's okay. That is something that either goes over to the next week, or it might be that once a month there's a different effort made by the family to resolve these things. Paperwork is one where often you can open the mail and, okay, so I've got a bill for this, or the library books need to go back. So you've got that information, the paperwork sitting there, and you sort of want it in sight and in mind. And again, that's okay. Once something's dealt with, you can bin that paper or put it in a folder. So make sure that you have a filing system for your paperwork. Have a hole punch that's handy for whenever you're doing this maintenance thing. So I would say as paperwork comes in, it's okay that it goes into a dumping ground. That's natural. It's much easier to drop a piece of paper onto the dumping ground than to go and get the filing system out and put one piece of paper away. And that's not even efficient to do it that way. But once a week you can gather all those papers together. So if there's a bill, you might have a section in your folder with bills that need to be paid and the bills that have been paid. And I'm not saying hang on to those bills that have been paid with the details of how you paid it and when for 7 years, but at least maybe for 6 months, just to make sure that that company doesn't come back chasing that money. You've got the record there and you can say, okay, I've paid that. Mind you, for most of us, all it takes is to look back through our statement on the bank account digitally and we can find that evidence of something being paid. So other ways that you might want to sort if it's a dumping pile is that, so you might have a pile for what needs to go to different rooms or a pile for different people to deal with. So it might be that there's a pile of things that Dad just doesn't know what's going on with that and Mum can deal with it. There's a pile that Dad has the resources to deal with and so that's a pile for him to deal with. It might be a pile for different children to tend to. You might find that the dumping ground attracts things that need fixing, and so you might have a specific box that those things go into. So just work with nature and just have a think, why does this keep ending up back in the dumping ground? It needs to have a place, and that needs to be natural and realistic. It might be that you're collecting things that are broken and at one level you are shooting on yourself. So you are saying to yourself, I shouldn't throw that out. I want to have a small impact on this earth, so I should get it fixed or I should fix it. But at another level you're going, that's never going to happen. That's never going to get fixed. So instead you keep putting the same item back in the dumping ground and you start to feel guilty. You start to feel frustrated that it keeps coming up. You feel guilty that you haven't fixed it. And one day your children are grown up so much they have no interest in that and it goes in the bin anyway. So if you start to get that perception of, yeah, I don't think that will ever get dealt with, do yourself a favour and get rid of it now, okay? Don't let it be there as something that's going to be a source of grief, anxiety, frustration, etc. One idea that I like for a dumping ground is if it's on a cabinet that has drawers or cupboards, make the drawers the dumping ground or put a box in the cupboard that can become the dumping ground. And so it might be a little bit more effort than just throwing it on the cabinet, but at least it keeps the cabinet looking nice. That's just something you can do. But if your dumping ground is right near the front door, don't tell yourself that the office is going to be the dumping ground, because it's unlikely that people are going to go those extra yards to a space that's out of sight and out of mind. So again, just work with nature in that respect. If you're sorting washing, think very seriously about having a permanent basket somewhere in the house that's easy to find, easy to get to, where as you sort the laundry and you realise, if a sock has a hole in it or something and it's not going to get repaired, send it straight off to the bin. If there's a garment that your children have all grown out of and you want to give it away, put it straight in the basket that's to go, that's donations. So you might have a basket that's for donations, so things that are to leave the house. So instead of something that's too small coming back through the washing and ends up on the floor or whatever, has to be washed again, put it into that basket. And it might be toys that the children have said, you know what, I don't really, this is for babies, I don't want it anymore. It goes in that basket. So just notice those things that tend to float around and jump up the area, and just think to yourself, why is that happening? And just work with nature and have an intentional system to deal with that. So before I finish this video, I just want to remind you that most people don't grow up with great organisational skills. It's not something that comes naturally to most people. I have had one daughter who grew up with a tendency to keep things tidy, and from age 2 she'd be tidying up after herself. Others can learn by us role modelling. So I'm going to do a video about our self-talk, and that will relate to role modelling and how we can positively influence those around us so that everyone else is coming on board with that process. The other thing is that some of us have great organisational skills, but we go through periods in life when it can be really challenging to either set up a system or to maintain it. Some systems require a certain amount of space, or they require a certain amount of time for us to maintain them, or they require a certain amount of money to be set up in the first place. So it's really important right from the get-go just to recognise that if things seem to be getting out of hand, there's a reason. Don't go beating yourself up. Be sure to love on yourself, okay? Don't should on yourself. Love on yourself. And just start to notice what issues in your house bring those feelings of anxiety or anger or frustration. And they're those areas that you can address one by one. And again, work with nature to come up with systems that work for you and work for your family. The other thing is, dropping your standards to get through a season can be of great value. It doesn't mean that you are less than. It just means that you value your sanity and your family's sanity. And a big way we can save time is we might should on ourselves, I should cook really complex dinners that take 50 minutes to prepare. Whereas what we can do perhaps is prepare a meal that we have a lot of leftovers so we can freeze it so that we can just reheat a meal some days, just to buy ourselves a little bit more time to organise our household or just to meet the needs of the family. It might just be that your children needed you on the floor for a snuggle. And the other thing is that you can just say that once a week you're just going to have a really simply put together meal, whether it is nachos thrown together or cheese on toast or scrambled eggs or just something that's really quick and easy. If you miss a key part of your nutrition on one day, it's actually not going to have a dismal effect on your family's health. It's most important to maintain your emotional well-being. So just be mindful of what pressure you're placing on yourself. And if you're placing pressure on other members of the family, or if others are placing pressure on you, it's really, really important in some seasons just to have that self-care and to get that balance to protect yourselves as you go through that process. All right, I really hope that this video has blessed you. I'll catch you on the next one. I'm based in Tasmania, Australia, and am available for consultations locally. I can also meet with you online for support with your organisational challenges. If this video blessed you, be sure to share, like and subscribe, and consider sharing with a friend.